Today we're going to do some brew in a bag home brewing. I'm going to go through the equipment that we need. Can you see this? So we have kettle, which I have come over here a little bit. It's an aluminium kettle. I filled it up with water and bring it up to my strike temperature. We have a big bag to put the grain in, one small child, the grain bill, sanitizer, wort chiller, recipe, mixing spoon, thermometer, yeast, and hops. That's all we need. I've sanitized everything. I've gone through and sprayed all my stuff, washed it down. This stuff all lives in the garage, so I have decided to not only scrub it down but also sanitize my brew pot, which I don't actually normally do, but we have mice in the garage, so I like to be extra careful. And that's it. I've sanitized my grain bag, which is actually just made out of curtain backing material, which we have ironed with a no seam sealant. Remains to be seen if it actually holds a 20-pound grain bill full of water, but we'll see. And that's it. What I'm going to do is, now that I've started my kettle boiling, I've actually filled it with hot water to give me a bit of a head start. I've got it started out at about 115 degrees Celsius. Now that I've got that going, I'm actually going to insert my my grain bag and see what it takes, see how long it takes to get up to my strike temperature. Once it gets into strike temperature, I'm going to slowly mix in my grain bill. And my assistant here is probably going to help me sanitize a couple of other things and maybe mix in the grain. Once that grain is mixed in, we are going to let it sit for an hour. Got to watch out for dough balls and just mix it in gently without aerating it. While that's heating up, I've moved a couple of things out of the way. Always important to have a lot of space when you brew because typically you get boil overs and stuff. You just want to have as little mess as possible. I've got my grains ready to put into the mash, so you can have a look at them. It's pretty much what your grain looks like. I'm going to make that into beer. The one grain that I haven't actually prepared yet is my oats. This is going to be an oatmeal stout. So what we've done is we are roasting 3/4 of a pound of flaked oats. This is standard flaked quaker oats at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. When the oven starts to smell like cookies, you know that your oats are ready. And that's actually going to go into the rest of the grain bill as we mix it in. Okay, so while the water is reaching the strike temperature, and actually using hot water has been really advantageous because it's getting to the strike temperature incredibly quickly. As you can see, this is just a normal stove. I'm going to just do a couple of things. I'm going to sanitize my spoon. This is just Star Sand solution, which I've put into a spray bottle just to make it easier. So this is a normal kitchen spoon. I don't believe in really buying a whole lot of brew specific equipment. You could probably use a brew specific thermometer, but try to keep it cheap, and I don't want to be too much of a brew weenie. So real easy to do. This is a contact sanitizer. Just spray it on, and it's an acid-based sanitizer. It just sanitizes on contact. Let it dry. It's food safe. It's very easy to use. So I'll put that aside on the stove. So I'm not too worried about dirtying anything because the stove is really hot. It gets stirred all the time. And I will also start sanitizing my fermenter. And of course, this, which I can't do without. I used to just rack things manually, just fill it up with water or solution, sanitizing solution, and just rack things manually out. I've got this racking cane that has a pump. I forget what it's called. Invaluable. I don't have a tap on my kettle, so this helps me get everything out of the kettle and into my fermenter. I'm using the Better Bottle fermenter, which a friend who started out brewing and then stopped gave me. I prefer these to the glass fermenters because they don't break. It's that simple. You can wrap the sides of the fermenter and get the air bubbles off of it, and that'll usually make your hops drop out of solution a little bit too. So just a really good setup. with that said, I'm going to go check the temperature of my water and see where we're at. Can you see the temperature here? So, I don't know if you can see this. Let me turn the light on. But we are getting into the high 150s. Our strike temperature is 161. We're a little bit above that, so that's perfect. I'm actually going to start slowly mixing in my grain bill right now. Grain bill is going to drop the temperature. Our mash temperature is 153 degrees Fahrenheit. So we are going to slowly bring the water down to that. So I'm going to turn the gas off and start mixing in my grain. So what we're going to do is, now we're at the right temperature, and start putting our grain into the mash. So we're going to do it slowly to avoid getting dough balls in there. Just kind of mix it in. You get a really thin mash, so it's actually not a problem to mix this in. Because normally when you mash and you sparge using a mash tun, you get a really thick mash and it's very difficult to work with. Here we have a good 7 and a bit gallons of water. Actually about 7 gallons worth of water. So the grain really mixes in well. And the thing to remember about brewing in a bag is that this is your entire your entire work is going to come out of here. So you need to take into account also what's going to boil off when you start your boil. So it's not enough to just throw in 5 gallons of mash and sparge like you normally do, 3 gallons depending on how you mash. But you really want to make sure you have everything that you're going to need. You need to also take into account the fact that when you pull this bag out of here, the grain's going to have soaked in a lot of the water. So you lose water that way. So you really want to take all that into account as you mix your grains in and as you decide how much water to use. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the rest of the grain in, then I'm going to seal it up, so let it sit for 1.25 hours, which is what my recipe calls for. And then I'm going to mash out, so I'm going to raise it up to 168 Fahrenheit and mash out. Alright, that's it for now. This is what it looks like once all the grain has been mixed in. I'm going to cover this up, I'm going to take a quick reading to know where my temperature's at. I'm going to cover it up and I'm going to let it mash. Using this actually makes a little bit of a mess sometimes. So I mentioned I had mice in the garage. I've got a big rat in the kitchen, which if you could just get a picture of the rat, he's on cleanup duty right now. So that works really well too. That helps us get all the grain cleaned up. Luckily I have a dog who likes eating grain. We're at 150, I'm going to call it 156. Yeah, we're at approximately 156. Which is good, still within the range we want. Okay. Had a little bit of overflow, I filled up a little bit too much water in there. That's actually fine. It's more of a mess than anything else. We let it sit like that for 1 hour. And then we're going to come back. So let's set our time to 1 hour. Actually it's 1 hour and 15. So it's when that goes off, we'll come back and check the mash. It's actually not you don't really have to cover it if you don't want to. There is such a huge amount of thermal mass in there, such a big thermal mass, that it only loses about 1 to 2 degrees Celsius an hour. So in this case, I might actually just, seeing as I've got a whole lot of water in there, I might actually just let it sit without covering it this time, especially considering the fact that it's dripping all over the stove. I want to clean that up sooner rather than later. Alright, stay tuned.